Lucy Letby has been found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 others at a hospital neonatal unit. Prosecutors said that Letby was a calculated opportunist who used the vulnerabilities of premature and sick infants to camouflage her acts. In 2015 and 16, there was a significant rise in the number of babies who suffered serious and unexpected collapses in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby was the only member of the nursing and clinical staff who was on duty each time the collapses happened, when the Crown argued were not natural events. She used various ways to harm the babies, including injecting air into the bloodstream, injecting air into the stomach, overfeeding with milk, physical assaults, and poisoning with insulin. She was arrested at her home in Chester in July 2018. Joseph Kotrie-Monson is a criminal defence lawyer. He's director of Mary Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street and in Manchester. And he joins me now. Joseph, first of all, we've heard actually from reporters that have been covering this case, from police, that it is one of those ones where it changes you and it always stays with you. And presumably there are some cases in court that are the same for lawyers and solicitors.
A case really where everybody, good afternoon, involved in this process has behaved in the best traditions of crime detection, enforcement and the justice system, from the officers to the lawyers, witnesses and of course families, the victims who've maintained their dignity throughout when they knew what had happened here. It's unusual to hear officers, hardened officers, experienced officers. These are murder squad officers who do murder day in, day out, speak in such bewildered terms, almost, without triumph, because there's no triumph here. This is a resolution of an inexplicable and horrific tragedy. There just aren't the adjectives, are there? And it's right when we hear from that officer, it doesn't end here. It doesn't end here in terms of vindication, justification, and a sense of that common word, which is so important nowadays, closure for families, but not just in respect of how these poor babies were selected for their deaths, but also how on earth it was allowed to happen. There's a story that's just surfaced, which it's clear has been held until the trial results to avoid prejudicing legal proceedings, that senior consultants, at least one on the unit, in advance of some attempted murders and at least one of the killings, had expressed serious concerns, and these weren't properly addressed, or certainly those later events were allowed to take on. We haven't heard the end of this. Of course, we have the sentence to come.
Indeed, we're expecting that sentence on Monday. You've got offices in Manchester. You've covered the kind of the court area up there, but the hospital itself is a very well-known hospital up in the northwest, and even for people who have not had their children treated there, their babies treated there, the kind of the impact that cases like this can have on a whole community, echoes for years, sometimes decades. We
all have, no matter where we are in the country, this is a story that is being reported internationally, because every parent recognises the vulnerability of their child and the trust that we place in hospitals and doctors. And in the context of the sentencing exercise from the judge, one which I suspect will be a whole life term, life means life, one of the most aggravating features will be the extent to which there's a risk that our trust in our hospital system is irrationally undermined by the actions of a conniving murderer, somebody who varied to avoid detection, varied even the methods of killings in order to.
And there'll be people listening to this, Joseph, that will agree with absolutely every word you say, and think that this is the most depraved act done in the most abhorrent way, and the fact that there's been no acknowledgement, no liability, no guilt admission, none of it. So there are parents that are walking away from this trial who still don't know, because the jury couldn't come to a yes or no here, that still, and they will never have closure, ever have closure, and that won't understand how you as a defence lawyer, and people like you, how can you defend somebody like a Lucy Letby in this case? But the cab rank system, the law depends upon a defence being proffered,
absolutely,
even in a case as hard as this one.
And let me say this: I'm a father of a young daughter. I spent my formative years, the first 18 years of my life, in Cheshire. This could not be more close to home for me without actual involvement or knowing the people involved. And I'm a father first, and I'm a lawyer second. As far as my job is concerned, well, you're right. We have a cab rank rule, don't we? And that says that I take the case that comes through the door, and I don't make the decision of a jury in a democracy for it. That means a couple of things. First of all, it means that people who are guilty, well, we know they're guilty. Some smart aleck version of Joseph over in the Court of Appeal doesn't get to come along and say, this inferior version of Joseph didn't properly represent you first time because he held back, because he allowed his own personal opinions in his arrogance to get in the way of you being defended properly in an adversarial system. But it's also the case that a lawyer doesn't usually know whether his client is guilty. And that means that the process of representing somebody, well, the innocent people, and there are some innocent people, the statistics tell us that approximately a third in criminal cases are found not guilty. Well, I can't make a decision to underrepresent them based on a prejudice at the beginning of a case. I have to put my feelings to the side.
Okay, Joseph, thank you so much for joining us there. Joseph Kotrie-Monson, the defence lawyer who joined us to talk through the trial part of that